Hello, everybody. We're back with another episode of Thank You for Your Reply, the real estate podcast. And today we are joined by Bill Short, who's the president of Red Elk Land Company in Tampa, Florida. Thanks for taking the time today, Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rich.
So, just to start out, could you please just introduce Red Elk Land Company and how that all got started?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that we business owners, no one finds it probably more interesting than ourselves, but I'll go through the highlights here, if you will. We're land brokers, Red Oak Land Company. We sell land for a multitude of type of development, really for just about everything, whether it be recreational. A lot of it's in the path of development. And by the nature of what we do here in Florida, Florida's been a growth state. By default, it's going to be in the path of development, at least at some point, at the rate things are going here in the market. So our typical client looks like right now is a multi-generational landowner. They're typically farmers, and they own a fantastic property. They've got a ton of people beating on their door, and they just are trying to figure out the best way to really maximize value. I started Red Oak Land Company probably about 8 years, a little over 8 years ago, and I've been a land broker. I've been in the business for a little over 20 years. I grew up in the Midwest, and I didn't realize growing up in the Midwest that I was in the land business by nature of being a wheat and cattle farmer. I never really thought about being in the land business, but having worked the land and helping manage the land, and then harvest of course crops and working with cattle, you are in the land business. And so it was a very natural transition, growing up from the Midwest, getting to Florida by way of an aviation career that I gave up on, so to speak, early on in my days. When I graduated from flight school at Embry-Riddle after college, did a graduate program there. And when I graduated, all the airlines were in complete bankruptcy post 9/11, a lot of furloughs. It was just a lot of uncertain time. And so I realized that land and real estate was going to give me a lot of flexibility one day with my kids, going to provide a nice quality of life. And I just went at it with both barrels and have never looked back since. So it's been good. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, I noticed that you have some flying on your website to have some aerial photography and private airplane kind of images.
Yeah, aviation's a big part of what we do. And it's a big part. I mean, it's a big part of my identity, I guess you would say. I don't know whether that's, if you talk to a mental health expert, I don't know if that's good or bad or not, but it definitely carries over a lot into what we do. Process and procedures, I call them flows because that's what we call them in the cockpit when we look at the day to day. And there's a lot of analogies, and it's very analogous to real estate. For instance, one would be, I tell folks, sometimes the best deal is the deal you never did, or that maybe you took second place on and you didn't get selected. And that analogy in aviation would be, it's better to be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground. So, there's as I go through my professional life, I recall on that aviation experience a lot. I used to fly a ton during the downturn and during the Great Recession. I flew a lot, and that was a good time to fly. I didn't have any children. It was just me and my wife, girlfriend at the time. It it really, I mean, I would do that on the nights and weekends because real estate was just absolutely on its ear. Lehman Brothers had gotten taken over. I mean, I was standing on the tarmac when I learned a lot of that information. Having all that, having that background, and being able to pay the bills, kind of have something to fall back on at that particular time in my career was fantastic. Now I've got wife and kids, and I still fly, but I just don't fly as much. And with drone technology, that has taken over a lot of our aerial photography work. I can put a drone in the backseat of my car, and after I get done meeting with the landowner, I can fly it right then and there, or I can have somebody fly it right then and there, and I don't have to spend hundreds of dollars of us and airplane. And airplanes are expensive. I mean, it's an expensive part of the world. I can make you $1 million in the aviation industry, but of course I'm going to need 10 million to start with. It's fun, but and I'm glad it's part of me, but it's really hard to turn a dollar in the aviation world.
I recall seeing I think it was a book, private aviation book. It's called like the $100 hamburger or something like that. And it was like
Yeah.
a listing of all the restaurants and private airports.
I mean, the aviation has really opened up a lot of doors for me. That I didn't realize it was going to open up. I mean, when I graduated from college, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was having a conversation. One thing about the Midwest is you spend a lot of time going down the road, so of course that lends itself to a lot of positive conversations and just conversation time in general. So I was having this conversation with my dad. And I was like, Dad, I just don't know what I want to do, And he says, well, right now you have a business degree. So does everybody else. And you need to be thinking about how you're going to differentiate yourself. And one thing you can do is you got a passion for aviation. And if that's what you're thinking about and that's the path you're going down, at least now you've got a whole, once you get done with flight school, whether you decide to do something with it or not in aviation, at least now you've got a whole list of certificates and at least another tier of qualifications that most people don't have. And so that was one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is those $100 hamburgers. I thought I was going to be doing that every weekend, but those add up fast. And being in Kansas is 1.2. I don't know if it's probably not the case now because it seems like water's drying up by the minute, but at the time it was 1.2% surface water is what it was a statistic I came across one day. And I flew to the lake with a buddy of mine and I said, man, I got to figure out a way to get my wings. That's going to be one quick way to water. At that point in time, I had no idea I was going to end up in Tampa. I had no idea I was going to end up in Florida. Another time it's opened up a lot of doors is I was in a conference room many of times in my early 20s, didn't know jack about real estate, still trying to figure out the nature of the business and the nature, even the tenor and the tone of the room. At the end of the meeting, somebody would go, how did you get here? And I'd tell them about aviation. They'd stop me right then and there. And all of a sudden I had instant credibility. We hadn't even talked 1 second about real estate. Next thing you know, they're calling me about the real estate problems and the real estate deals and the real estate issues and things they're wanting me to help them solve. That's another aspect of it I never really saw coming.
The real nice icebreaker.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it was a great way. Now I had something to talk about, or they had something to talk about with me. Because let's call it. I mean, that's an important part of the relationship.
Well, so kind of along those lines is what's your number one source for identifying your profitable investment opportunities at the moment, and how has that changed a lot over the last few years?
Well, technology obviously is a huge aspect of it. High tech will never replace high touch. It really, that's one of the things I really like about real estate is it's a people business, and in order to be in the people business, you got to have a person to person conversation. Some people call it belly to belly, man to man, however you want to describe it. So we can sit here and we can map and we can AI and we can model and we can drive and we can we can sit here on our desktop or on our laptop and our iPads till we're blue in the face, run market studies. But until you have that first conversation or a conversation, nothing gets done, in my opinion. So there really is no secret to it. It's all comes back down to fundamentals. I mean, when I first got started, Google Maps weren't what it was today. I mean, you just didn't have that level of sophistication in technology. So you had to get in a car and drive. And then you start driving and you drive by, let's say, a property like what I have sitting here behind me. And you're like, wow, that seems like it's be a good piece. How do I find the owner? And you had to pull out your phone book and had to figure it out, blood, sweat, and tears. And technology is starting to come online where it was getting a lot easier to, figure out who owns what and how much they own and what they have. And that's an important piece of it. Of course, that's definitely shortened the sales cycle and shortened our cycles in identifying opportunities. But if that person's not willing, if the person I'm calling on is not willing to answer the phone or not willing to have a conversation, all the technology is completely trashed at that point. So it's really the fundamentals is just getting out there and having conversations, and serendipitously, I mean, one person will introduce you to another, introduce you to another, introduce you to another, and every conversation, whether it goes good or bad, is a matter of perception. But I always say, what did I learn in that conversation? If I learned something, whether it be something about the market, because let's face it, I mean, I'm working multiple different cities, multiple different counties. In fact, I'm even licensed in other states, and I cannot be everywhere, nor can anyone particularly humanly possible know everything and be everywhere. So if I'm talking to somebody, whether it's a buyer or a seller, chances are they're going to know something about the market I don't. And so that's been and that might lead to another opportunity. So, and of course, there's always the activity breeds other activity, but that's nice and all, but and that definitely is a big part of it. But that's the positive outreach is where we see most of our opportunities.
The actual people to people,
old fashioned, which is fun because I mean, it's a good thing I like people.
Yeah, that helps.
Most days.
Yeah, I was trying to think of other, the whole what you said about if you can't have the alternative ways of getting in the room, so to speak. You could fly your drone in there and with a note on it, or maybe an owl, a trained owl.
What is it? Homing pigeons. We send
Yeah.
a pigeon. We've gone from the days of sending out of pigeons. I mean, when I first started in the industry, I mean, we were FedExing contracts, and when we were going back and forth with the contract negotiation. Then we started emailing them, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to be so productive. We're going to only have to work a couple days a week because it's going to be so much faster. But it's amazing. I mean, I see this in an airport, whether I'm flying, whether I'm in an airport terminal, in a general aviation terminal, or whether I'm in a commercial terminal as a passenger. It's amazing because people get so upset because the airplane's delayed. But what we've forgotten is it's still X or 20X faster than the train. And that, that's somewhat of our
Or
next,
the wagon.
until we can teleport ourselves, that's kind of the next best alternative, right? But, and obviously, the video calls as over the last 5 years has really changed a lot of that as well. I mean, it never replaces person to person. I mean, true in-person meetings, but it's a close number too. And a lot of decision makers are younger. I mean, our average age of our client is usually in their 60s or above, but we're seeing the next generation really take the reins, and that next generation, of course, is the millennials and the Gen Xers, so to speak, and that really augments it a lot too as well. I don't know, there is no silver bullet and there is no shortcut, but yeah, no, it's been a positive thing, the direction that the world has been going in, as far as business goes.
So what's one common belief about real estate investing that you found to be completely wrong?
Yeah, man, one common belief about that, I love it. Just about the time you think you know everything, or I mean, there was a period of time in my career that I felt like you couldn't throw a property at me and I couldn't probably get within 5 or 10% of the value just guessing at it. And what I've grown to learn is that I was just lying to myself. And I mean, there is still a lot of similarities in one property to the next. And, the better you know a market, the better. But what I didn't realize is that in real estate is that we're all on a quest looking for answers on each individual property. And so I call it preconceived bias. One of the things, and I can't remember who said it the best, I think it was Mark Twain, and I'm going to botch the quote here, but I'll give it a go. It said, it's not what you don't know that'll hurt you. It's what you think you know with absolute certainty that'll absolutely hurt you. And I got to tell you, if I could have that tattooed onto my arm or back of my hand, I probably would.
You could. We have the technology.
If I had a tattoo on the back of my arm or back of my hand, I'd probably want to change it after, a couple hours, which technology is probably there too. I just don't know about it. Long story short is, I really thought that the people I was working with early on in my career and the people that I considered real estate gurus, I thought they knew it all. I thought they were just and they are in some ways encyclopedias of the real estate of whatever it is, whatever the sector is, if it's office, if it's land. Obviously my space is being land, and I gotten to know a lot of different disciplines, and I thought, man, these guys are absolute experts. And they are, and what they are is they're expert learners. They're absolutely students of the industry. They're students of the product, and that product being land, and that product being humans as well. I mean, I read just as many psychology books as I do about real estate, and the finance and economics and logistics. I read a lot, whether it be about current economic times, market conditions, current events in the real estate world. But I also didn't realize, my perception of the real estate world when getting into it was kind of this slick back hair, Wall Street kind of looking guy. And I realized that it's just ordinary people just like me. There are no, I mean, it takes all types. I mean, we meet some of the most fantastic and most interesting people that I would otherwise not meet in real estate, other than real estate. And it wasn't the three-piece suit looking kind of guy that you see in the movies.
The Wolf of
It's
Wall Street.
exactly. And I mean, those are out there. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, those stories are obviously out there. But it was amazing to me to realize that most of the people, if not all the people in real estate, are just real people trying to earn a living, and they're not all rich. They're all. I mean, they may have good times over bad times. Some years are good, some years are bad. We're all trying to earn a honest living. And at times, I mean, I saw it throughout the great financial crisis, 08, 09. I mean, people were struggling, and, of no fault of their own, just a current unfortunate economic sign of the times. And that was one of the most interesting things just overall about real estate, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's crazy. That came up in a conversation in a previous episode. But I always think of that. And NPR did an amazing piece on that with the giant pool of money that so perfectly explained the whole situation, how it unfolded, and it's so complex that I remember, you know, being like understanding it while I was listening to it, but as soon as it was over, I was like, wait, no, okay, what is that again?
Yeah.
Not, and I could never explain it to anybody, but you know,
I'm proven wrong daily. I mean, and that's what I like about the business is that, if day after day after day after day after day is just validating what Bill Short's perception about real estate is, then it's gonna get boring pretty quick. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you've ever been in a room where you feel like you're always right all the time, it's gonna get real boring real fast. So the constant challenge, the constant learning, the constant evolution, there's a lot of things that, it's not like technology where, microchips, replicate or change every so fast. Not, I like that because it's not that fast, but it changes. It's changing all the time. The regulatory environment is changing all the time. Anytime you've got a human or relationship based business, I think there's always going to be ever evolving change. That's what brings me back to it. It's that challenge day after day, and it's that opportunity to learn something every day that I didn't already, or to challenge my current belief.
well, and we're at this interesting point in time now, as far as technology, where with AI, it's learning all the time, and I think there's going to be a point in time where AI is just like you just said about knowledge, your knowledge of things evolving and regulations evolving when there's people involved, and it's like, but now we're at a stage, we're on that like seam, the crossover between.
Well, I mean, look at the current state of affairs with the current. I mean, and I'm not even talking politics. I'm just saying, just in general. I mean, just from January 1 to April, to whatever it is today. I mean, first quarter of this year. I mean, we've seen just drastic changes, and a lot
Roller
of that.
coaster.
I mean, a lot of real estate. I mean, and a lot of the way people feel about the economy is somewhat a psychology of the masses. I mean, do you feel that it's going to get better, or do you feel that it's going to get worse? And whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just what's the overall prevailing sentiment, and a lot of logic can kind of break through a lot of that. But I mean, when let's say somebody buys a piece of land from me today and they buy it for a single family subdivision, or they contract for it today, I should say, for a single family, and I'm just using a single family subdivision as an example. But whether it be a development at any time, if they contract for it today, I mean, it's going to be, they're not going to be starting construction this year, especially if it needs to be rezoned and it needs to go through permitting and entitlement process. And I mean, the regulatory process and get your permits in which to develop said site, it can take some time. So it's going to take you, if construction starts sometimes next year, and depending on what your construction timeline is, I mean, it's going to be a considerably different time when you actually come out of the ground and have something to deliver to the marketplace, from taking it from land all the way to finished or ready to deliver the first unit of development. So, you know, what is the, we all can only work on the data that we're provided today,
Yeah.
and assuming that all things stay somewhat equal, or at least in equilibrium, or sometimes there's got to be a leap of faith that, okay, in the next 2 years, it's not going to be a total, we're not going to be in a total financial crisis like we were in '08. And we won't, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to predict the future, but at the end of the day, I don't think we'll see anything like that ever again anytime soon. I could be wrong, but at the end of the day, we really got if you're buying or selling, you're going, okay, does it make sense to hold and to wait to sell? Is market going to prove? I mean, it's like time in the stock market. It's almost nearly impossible.
Yeah, that's what I'm going through right now, where because I have my house and I'm renting out in Astoria and thinking about selling it. I've got tenants in there, their lease is coming up. They don't want to move out, but they also aren't able to buy it. But then I'm like, okay, do I hold it and let them keep renting? Do I outright sell it, get my money out, my equity out, which I could definitely use? Or do I extend their lease, keep them in there for compassion's sake, and then have maybe markets will go up and the house will maybe even more value later, and I sell it, even though I'll be in what's it called, capital gains territory at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this year could sell it without and not have capital gains. So
Right.
I'm like trying to read the tea leaves, like, okay, what should I do?
Oh my goodness. I mean, we play a lot of Monopoly around our house. My almost 9-year-old loves Monopoly. And it's funny because I love playing Monopoly as a kid. And the game of Monopoly, the rules of Monopoly have not changed over the last 100+ years it's been around. I don't know how long it's been, forever. And it's the old timing and luck. If I own this and somebody rolls the dice and lands on it, then they pay me rent. If they don't, and then I land on their property, then I pay them rent. I could go, so then and it's it's the game is not, I mean, the game is more complex than Monopoly, but the fundamentals are almost exactly the same in the sense that, okay, do I sell? Do I hold on to it? Do I work with my current tenant? What does that look like? I firmly believe, and not that you're asking me for my advice, but bird in hand's worth two in the bush. And I firmly believe it. I don't remember, maybe it was Warren Buffett says, you'll never go broke taking a profit. Throw the spreadsheet out the window or the pro forma and go, well, am I getting a decent return, and am I happy with that return, and kind of forget about what you could be getting. Because if you sit there and think about what you could be getting, you'll go jump off the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, or what you thought you should get. I was working with some young college students the other day about real estate pro formas, and I said, here, we need to be accurate, we need to be precise, but just know and don't be disappointed when your pro forma is wrong, because that's the only thing I can guarantee. It's going to be wrong. Question is, how wrong is it going to be? I was talking to a golfing caddy, and he says, it's not the golfer that nails the shot every single time, because that's unforeseeable. That can't be done. It's he's going to miss. How much is he going to miss by? And then what is his? And then resiliency, I mean, is a huge part of our business, and a huge part of, I preach it all the time. I mean, using the golfing analogy, if somebody hits a bad shot, usually their second shot is right on point. They're able to kind of master the restart, so to speak. And that's a huge part. That's a huge part of the real estate business. I mean, if you can, and all that is 6 inches between the ears. I mean, we're just working on psychology, our mental health, and our brain. At that point, I mean, it has nothing to do with the advent of real estate, and the discipline of it.
Yeah.
So maybe a little cerebral, but we are cerebral individuals, I find.
Yeah.
Humans.
6 inches between the ears. I like that. Never heard that.
Right.
How do you structure your typical workday to maximize your productivity while you're managing multiple investment properties and also
Yeah.
maintaining a work-life balance?
I got two young kids. I got a wife. We work hard. We play hard. Sometimes that playing hard right now in my world comes in the format of sleep
Or Monopoly?
before Monopoly. But by the time we get done working, I sleep really good at night. I really do. And the work-life balance thing, I mean, I think that's a journey into itself. At least it is for me. And I'm trying to figure it out. And I don't have it mastered. I wish I did. I mean, before our children were born, I spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, what is my schedule is obviously going to change. What is that going to look like? And then our son was born. He's our oldest, and our son was born, and I was like, I just wasted 6 months off and on, of brain space just thinking about what my schedule is going to look like, because I had no idea what I was in for at that particular point in time. So back that into what that looks like today. I typically try to rather than maintain, rather manage time, try to manage energy. There are times where I load up my schedule. I am for sure an extrovert. Got to have my introverted tendencies though. And there are times, even times this week, where I just went back to back to back to back to back. And by the time I'm done at the end of the day, I am tired. I mean, and especially just worn out of having meaningful and mindful conversations and staying in the moment at any one given time. I love having coffee and having breakfast with my children, helping them get up and go to school. I take them to school first thing in the morning. Then I come back and I sit down for a few minutes and write down the top 2 or 3 things that I want to get done that day. Meaning, if all hell goes to in a handbasket and just my whole world blows up, I just want to have these 3 things done. And it doesn't always happen that way. I don't always get those 3 things done. Somebody might call me at 9:30 with an issue, and next thing you know, I'm over on that, and I've got to spend 2 or 3 hours, working on that. And then I'm going to my next appointment, after lunch. But I usually like to spend the morning. I make a list of things to do. I want to do in one particular day. I also make a list of things that I don't want to do or that I want to avoid. And one of those things I want to avoid my email or my inbox first thing in the morning, because it can absorb me. It can absorb me. So with those, I kind of use those kind of core principles, and that gives me some flexibility. I know I saw Jeff Bezos, says he doesn't have a meeting before 10 o'clock. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I could map out what my perfect day looks like, and I might get one of those a month just because of the nature of whatever may be happening that one particular day. But I do try just some standards, take the kids to school, write down the top 3 things, do some time blocking. I mean, try to figure out I need to block off some time for returning calls, returning emails, so that way I'm not getting absorbed into it. And then by the end of the day, I want to write down some successes, some lessons learned, and then I want to go ahead and a key to a good day is a good day before. So, before I go to bed or after I'm done with the work day, I write down some things I want to accomplish tomorrow. Whether that's still after I sleep, after I sleep for a few hours, whether those things, whatever I want to accomplish tomorrow, it still holds true. I don't know, but it's something I will look at before I start my day. And if it does hold true, then I'll write them down as the top 3 things that I want to do, in the morning.
Yeah, some nice mini goal setting kind of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try not to take a meeting first thing Monday morning. I mean, it does happen. I try not to take a meeting last day, on the last hour on Friday. I mean, it does happen. But I mean, I have some core blocks that I want to achieve, but I also, it's important to have some flexibility, at least in our space. But managing energy is a huge piece of it for me.
Yeah, it's a juggling act for sure, and the whole making plans
Yeah.
thing.
Well, some people say,
How to make God laugh or whatever they say.
right. So, yeah, no doubt. Some people, yeah, God, my mother said that to me daily at one point. I mean, the idea is in some days, the idea is do your focus work early on in the morning.
That's what I need to do.
You
That's where
know,
my brain is set for that.
like for instance, I mean, I'll just give you a real world example. Like today, I needed to write and review a contract first thing in the morning before the kids get up and when the house is quiet and it's just me and the dog. Fine, great. What I couldn't plan on is my 5-year-old daughter trying to jump in bed with me at 3 in the morning and then just well, I can't say, God bless her. I mean, I can't say ruin my whole next day, but at the same token, I mean, I wasn't planning on that. So she comes in at 3. I get her back in her bed. I go back. I'm now awake, so I read for a little bit, and so now I've been up for an hour, hour and a half, and then I finally doze off. And next thing you know, my alarm's blasting at 7:15. That contract didn't get reviewed and didn't get written. So those things are going to happen. So now I got to find time in the daylight hours, proverbially, because sun hadn't come up yet. When my original plan, I got to find time in my daylight hours to then do that work. And that can be kind of tough. And and I get kind of stuck in my ways, and I can get a little bit, just honed in on and irritated and irritability. But I realize that, at some point my 5-year-old daughter is going to go to college, and this isn't going to be an issue. And I'm going to wish that she had jumped in my bed and tried to snuggle with me because she wanted dad and wanted the comfort of her mom and dad. And so those are the things that I can lose sight of very easily, but try to keep in mind.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Same struggles.
And I mean, what's a couple hours? I mean, the contract doesn't get reviewed. I mean, is the deal going to fall apart? No. Is
Well,
Bill going to be irritated? A little bit.
yeah. Well, and when you have that your routine of the morning where you assess the things that need to get done and put your 3 priorities, then that would take care of getting the thing done if it was still important at that point.
Yes, exactly.
So,
And it is at the
like a
top
little
of the
fail
list.
safe.
Right. Absolutely.
So earlier you were talking about the aviation piece, and that seems to be a pretty strong part of your evaluation on land and all that. Getting that unique perspective.
Yeah.
How does that transform your ability to assess the properties, and has it solved any challenges?
Well, it definitely gives you, I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but it definitely gives you a bird's eye perspective and an overall perspective in real time.
Mm.
So a lot of my, flying time has been with flying students. A lot of my flying students have been real estate developers and home builders or real estate practitioners that I've met along the way. Some of them have been personal friends of mine, but I swear more often than not, it's usually with somebody in real estate. And so you've got it's really easy to see the path of growth when you're flying it at least a few times a week, flying on one particular market, whether it be that you're flying it for your own personal reasons or whether you're flying it for somebody else. I mean, my flying comes, I mean, we pilots, we're like drug addicts. I mean, we try to find a way to, don't get me wrong, I've never been a drug addict, but don't, yeah, I'm going to tell you, so you got, so I've heard.
Yeah.
And so, we're addicts at that point, of any type. So we're looking for any excuse we can to get in the air. And if somebody's like, hey, you're a flight instructor as well, why don't you go ahead and take me for a flying lesson? Done. You want to go fly with me for dinner? Sure, let's go. You want to, some of my clients own their own airplanes and they take me along as a cheap insurance policy. Perfect. I've got the flexibility to do that. Uh, and of course, these have kind of been dampened over the years due to the fact that I've got a young family and a business to run and everything else, and I've had to kind of be a little bit more selective. But when I was younger, it was definitely, it's a huge part of it today. I mean, jumping in the air and being able to take an overall look at it in real time. I mean, are they, even though we're land guys, it's important for us to follow the public works projects. Are they widening the road? Are they extending the road? What are they doing there? I mean, oh shoot, they've been talking about it for 20 years. Glad to see that they're finally doing it. I heard they were letting it out to bid, and I knew they let it out to bid, but kind of nice to see the bulldozer on the ground finally. So that's been a huge part of it. It's not been a fail safe or a silver bullet. I know some people are like, oh my gosh, man, that's amazing. You must just see the world a lot differently. Well, yeah, I mean, we're all unique and we all have a unique perspective and we all see the world differently anyway on the ground, whether it be on the ground or in the air. I've enjoyed it. I really have. And it gave me what really aviation has also done for me is gave me the discipline at the young age to kind of keep myself grounded. I mean, you got to be
Ironically.
got to be responsible. Pun intended. Got to be responsible in the air. And that allows me to be more responsible in the ground as well. I needed that,
Yeah.
especially when I was younger.
Do
But yeah,
you own a plane?
no. Beautiful part about it is I don't own one.
Oh, okay.
I remember asking a computer teacher one time in high school. I said, "Do you own a computer?" And he said, "No, I got computers at school. I got a whole computer lab. I work with computers every day, all day. I don't own one." That's kind of how I feel about aviation. I have clients that own them. I have accessibility to an airplane at any given time through a couple of the municipal airports, so I can just jump out and get in one in just about any time, depending on what their schedule is. I have aspirations to own one, but I'm not in any hurry. The cheap part of owning an airplane is the actual purchase of the airplane, and we all know airplanes aren't cheap. So they're expensive to maintain and they're expensive to operate. And it's been good.
Somewhere to and so well.
Oh my goodness, yes. Somewhere to store it. So I mean, gas is not cheap. I mean, overall, it's just easier to rent for right now. And maybe when our kids get a little older and they go to college and we do, we'll probably visit them by way of airplane quite often. It might make some more sense then. But as of right now, I don't have it. I mean, a lot of people that own airplanes have second homes, and I don't have a second home. I mean, I would use it. We even had a lot of our clients, aviation clients, sell their airplanes during COVID because they said one of the reasons why I had an airplane was to travel for business meetings, and I'm not traveling for business meetings. I'm doing it all over Zoom and Teams and Google Meet and everything else. And it makes sense. So we're going to sell the airplane, and if we decide we want to buy another one, we will. After this kind of settles down a little bit. So yeah, it's been interesting. But I still love to fly. I mean, it's something you can never get rid of. I love it.
Yeah, I was taken up once just many years ago, just prior to 9/11. Actually, someone took me up in his Cessna, and he also let me fly a little bit when we were up. And we did a touch and go, and he's like whips around, and then he's like, "Here, you take off." And I was like, "What?" So I got to, and it's that moment when when gravity lets go of you, that's like just was so magical and I just got obsessed with it for a while, that
Oh my goodness.
wanting to learn to fly.
Learning how to take off. I mean, whether I'm flying with a friend that's just flying for fun, or whether I'm flying with a student, or flying with anybody, I let them always handle the takeoff. And it doesn't seem right at the time, especially if they don't have any. And I tell them ahead of time, so they know what they're getting up against. So they just didn't completely. Sometimes I don't, but I mean, most of the time I brief them and say, you're going to handle the takeoff, and I'm going to go, what? Handle the takeoff? And I said, yeah, you're going to handle the takeoff. I'll be right here with you. You can't mess it up. I won't let you mess it up. I'm able to see 2 or 3 steps down ahead of you, at least, maybe even 4 or 5. And I said, I'm not going to let you get hurt. And it changes their whole life. And I used to think when I would fly with somebody said, take as many people you can flying, it'll change the world. It's very rewarding. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, it's kind of a luxury item at this point is what I was thinking. It brings out the inner child in all of us. The only, one other thing, I mean, as a personal side note, I mean, anybody says, how do you, I say, be careful who you take flying, though. I've only taken one woman flying, and then she became my wife. So don't go on a flying date unless you're planning on marrying her.
You heard it here, folks. So, well, I guess that kind of leads into this question, kind of, not saying that you made a mistake, but in that regard. But
no, I've made lots of mistakes.
Can you share a major mistake you made early in your investment career and what you learned from it?
Oh my goodness. I'm trying to think of, here, Rich, here's the problem. I'm trying to think of, the pivotal mistake. I mean, I could list out the number of mistakes that I've made throughout my entire career. And I mean, we don't have enough time in the day to go over all of them.
What's one that you think that comes up in your mind more
Trusting
often?
the wrong people. I mean, I'm a trustful person by nature. If I had, at least early on in my career, I know George W. Bush botched this quote years ago. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He couldn't get that part out. It's a famous quote. But and I mean, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, if that's my biggest mistake, I think I'm doing all right. But there was a lot of time where somebody would take our material and I mean, I would just blindly release everything to them and work ahead of the. I mean, I was young, I was hungry, I was wanting to prove myself. I wasn't from the market. I needed to do, if you can't, what do they say? Work hard, get ahead. You got to have talent and hard work. If you're not that talented, you got to make it up in hard work. I screwed that whole phrase up, but that's fine. The concept is there. And so that's how I lived it. And next thing you know, I'm working myself to the bone for a lot of different folks that, had different intentions and different aspirations. And if I'm willing to work for free, then why would they? Why wouldn't they take advantage of me? So, and that's something, I mean, that we kind of keep an eye out. I mean, I love working for good people. You cannot make a good deal. And what's one of the things that I had to learn, and I firmly believe you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. It's the whole reason why I read aviation accident reports. Yet another aviation to real estate analogy. I read aviation accident reports not because I'm some morbid SOB, but because I will not live long enough to make all the mistakes myself. So if I can learn from others' mistakes, I mean, that's a literal statement in aviation, obviously, somewhat figuratively in real estate because they're more financial and that's not life or death. But I find that through every failure or thing that didn't go well puts me in a better path. I mean, I am a firm believer, and it's easy to lose sight of it, but I am a firm believer that everything is happening for you and not to you. And so that was probably and it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, having that victim mindset was probably a failure in its own way, and I didn't even know it. So, I don't really know if I can add more to that, but I'd say that was probably one of my bigger failures. And there's times where I've gone back and thank some of those people. I said, you encouraged me to do the right thing on the next deal, and I will never blame anyone other than myself for anything that doesn't go well in my world. And I mean, I don't. If that's like I said, if that's my biggest failure, I think I'm ahead of the game. I mean, I really am. I mean, there's times where you know we've missed the mark. I mean, we don't get the values right every time, and that can create a lot of heartburn and a lot of issues. You know, and so those are some obvious failures, but I mean, I'm doing pretty good. If that's the case,
Yeah.
keeping an eye on your future pipeline. I mean, sometimes we lose sight of that. Sometimes we think we're good, and next thing you know, deals get extended, and that means our paycheck gets extended, or commissions get extended, and things that we didn't foresee. I mean, we can't
Do,
control that sometimes.
do you have any? What are some systems? That I'm talking about technology here
Hmm.
that you use to track all that kind of stuff or manage the pipeline,
Yeah,
manage your leads, manage your work.
I'm pretty old school. I mean, we use a basic CRM. It's not. I wouldn't even say it's one of the name brand ones. It serves our purpose quite well, and that's a huge part of it. Staying in front of people. But I mean, at the end of the day, even whether they're in my CRM or not, I mean, I still, if I need to call 5 people, I write out those 5 people's names so it's sitting right there on a notebook right in front of me every day, all day, and so I don't forget it. Because technology is great, but I mean, you know, it's easy for it to kind of get into the background. So I used to use sticky notes. Heck, at one point I had sticky notes and index cards all over my desk, all over my office. It was a mess.
I like a good sticky
Sometimes I just
note. I
use an
got
old-fashioned notebook.
yeah,
I mean, I hate to say it, but if you don't make the call, it doesn't matter how you keep track of it.
yeah.
So whatever medium, and no two people are the same. I mean, whatever they need to make it at forefront of mind. I mean, and no human interacts the same way.
Well, I took a project management class 15 years ago or something, and one of the methods they taught to brainstorm a project and like figure out the tasks and various things and stakeholders is all sticky notes like on a wall.
Yeah.
just get them all up there, and then you start moving them around, organize them, and I still love that. I have one sitting right here um, that I'll stick things on and move things around. It just technology's yeah, like you said, technology is great, but sometimes just seeing it physically in front of you does so much more. And maybe that's we're old school. I'm sure the
I mean,
tech savvy
one.
youth probably don't feel the same way, but
I remember one time I was getting my iPad worked on at the Genius Bar in the Apple Store, and I had a notebook, and I had the iPad with the pencil and everything, and
oh
the guy at the Genius Bar was like, "Why do you have a notebook?"
yeah.
Two different reasons. Didn't even try to explain it to him because I just knew he wasn't going to get it, and he was at least 10 or 20 years to my junior. And when I walked away from that, I'm like, God, I feel like kind of an old man in that situation. Maybe he's right. Maybe I need to ditch maybe I just completely ditch the old school notebook. I mean, old school notebook is where it's at for me.
Like right now on technology side of like where so I have several different calendars. I played with Calendly a little bit, but they're all like Google calendars. I still haven't been able to a couple of them tie into my CRM, and like a couple of them are and speak to each other. But I'm still I kind of this is where technology goes awry because you like end up. It's so easy to just create a new calendar or like start putting appointments into one calendar, but then wait, now I got to go look physically at this one because for some reason it's not communicating, and so you're always like
I
I've
agree.
created the work more.
No, I completely agree with you, Rich. I'm of a similar I have a similar situation, and it is so easy to just can copy and paste, or
Mm-hmm.
whether that may be. I love Calendly. I mean, it's a huge tool that we use. It's by no means perfect. I mean, it's a simple. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess you could call it an AI tool. I mean, really. I mean, you put some logic in it, and then it then adjusts your calendar accordingly. I mean, or at least makes your availability right then and there. But that's a perfect example. I mean, Calendly is pretty sophisticated, but it doesn't take into the 30-minute travel time on it'll do, for instance, I mean, I love it. I don't know that I can live without it, tell you the truth. But at the end, one of the limitations it is, and this is one of the limitations what I think with AI is that, trash in, trash out. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if the data is
Yep.
trash, and I mean, even if it's a learned model, so, it, and there may be better ones out there. And I mean, I'm not here to, and I'm nor am I going to go spend the time and go look for it because it works for me. And if that means that it doesn't quite always get it right because it can't factor in travel times, then I'm okay with that. You know, but there are times where somebody, I mean, it's not often, but there are times where a Calendly or a Calendly like system, I'll have to have my assistant shoot an email and say, hey, look, Bill can't meet at that time because I might have an hour travel time instead of a 30-minute travel time from meeting to meeting.
Yep. That's
Just
true.
using
Yeah.
a simple example.
It's something I hadn't really thought of because so far all my meetings are digital,
Yeah,
online, so
right.
they're sitting
And
right
a
here.
lot of
So
ours are too. A lot of ours are conference calls. A lot of ours are scheduled calls. A lot of ours are, virtual as well. It's almost, it is almost perfect. It's almost a perfect model for those.
mm-hmm.
I mean, but I mean, how many times? I mean, there's sometimes where appointments run long.
Mm-hmm.
How do you factor that into the model, and so on and so forth. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm a combination of high tech, low tech. I call myself a zennial. I grew up with an analog childhood with a digital somewhat adulthood.
Same.
I don't know if we're at advantage or disadvantage, but it works for me.
I think we're at a disadvantage, or sorry, I think we're at an advantage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
having had the best of both worlds, kind of. I like my childhood without all the tech.
Same. I mean, I mentor a lot of young guys, and they say, how do you get your deals? How do you find how do you find your opportunities? And I pull out my phone, and they're like, huh? I said, if you don't have quickest way to conversation is a phone call. I mean, an email I mean, there's technologies and emails and LinkedIn's and social media Outlook. And, I mean, there's a lot of things that help short circuit that. And that's the thing about technology. I mean, I can set up a cadence or an email system or even a text system in our system that, if we don't hear back from somebody, it'll hit them again, but you lose the authenticity, and losing that authenticity. I know it's a major buzzword in today's world. Can't go a day without somebody not mentioning authenticity, but it's a pure fact. And authenticity is, are you who you are? In my opinion, and I don't know what the true definition of it is, but authenticity is you are who you say you are. I'm not trying to pretend like I'm an AI. I'm not trying to have an AI bot pretend like it's me,
Mm-hmm.
even in the written.
Yeah. Well, but before we wrap up, what's one skill you think most real estate investors overlook, but is crucial for long-term success?
Ooh, the illusion of certainty. I'm sure there's been books written about it, but I think I come back down, and I know I didn't necessarily mean that be the theme of my talking points here, but I think where people get into a lot of trouble is where they're not willing to really embrace the uncertainty, and sometimes throughout not being able to embrace the uncertainty, they end up lying to themselves, and if they lie to themselves for long enough, the next thing you know, they make a foolish investment. When they make a foolish investment, they lose a lot of money. When they lose a lot of money, then and I'm going to go give the proverbial, they lose a lot of money. And the next thing you know, they got to sell the house. Their kids don't like them, get a divorce. I mean, and I'm just going through the whole financial
Downward
crisis
spiral.
that we saw. Yeah, just the downward spiral, which doesn't always occur. I've, and but I do think, what we see, and at least in real estate and in our clients, whether it's buyers or sellers, when they get into a pattern of telling themselves, whether about a real estate deal, when they get into a pattern about real estate deals, that if I can kind of see it, sometimes I can see it, sometimes it catches me off guard, but from an outsider, sometimes looking in as a third party consultant, I'm sitting there looking at him going, holy smokes, this guy or gal or family or client has told themselves this long enough that they're starting to actually believe it. And it starts with, holy smokes, I got an offer for my property for $1 million. 6 months later, they get one for $1.2 million. 6 months later, they get one for $1.5 million. I'm like, well, shoot, they're not wrong at that current trend. They're going to be in a much better position, but they also got to understand that trend's never going to last forever. And maybe that offer wasn't, maybe the first offer at $1 million or $1.2 million, first offer or two, maybe it wasn't a real offer to begin with. But sometimes they get down these patterns, and we see it on the buyer's perspective is, wow, I think here's, run the pro forma. And then they start playing with the pro forma long enough that, they start putting in parameters. We've seen rent appreciation, historical rent appreciation. We've seen a historical price appreciation. But I also know if that's outpacing income appreciation and job growth, at some point, that's going to come to a stop and even decline. And in some markets, we've seen that already and have seen that for a while, especially on rent appreciation on multifamily real estate deals. So, they get into that trap of, continually thinking the market's going to improve, or the opposite trap is continually thinking that the market is not going to improve.
And wait
And
to buy.
that's a whole nother set of issues. That's the inverse set. So it's real. There's time there. I have a ton of conversations in any given week, day, or month where all I am trying to do is benchmark my expectations to not make myself not feel crazy, but to prove that I'm not crazy, and that what we heard yesterday was just, maybe it was just whiskey talk. Maybe it was a guy saying, hey, I had somebody offer my, $10 million on it when you only know it's worth $5 million. You're like, holy smokes. Then you start hearing that enough times, and you're like, what am I missing? So we're constantly out there trying to field truth what we're hearing in the marketplace. And that's really a huge part of it. Stay curious is another big aspect of it. As long as you can stay curious and go, well, I wonder why that is, or I wonder what went right to make that happen, or I wonder how that happened. If you can just ask yourself that, especially as you're trying to evaluate other deals or maybe understand deals that you missed, or missed opportunities, really getting into the nitty gritty and the weeds of it is really a huge thing that people can do to kind of, that's the antidote, or not the antidote, but that's the oh goodness, I can't even think of the word.
The
The
cure.
anti-venom,
Oh yeah.
it's not the right
Well,
word, but you get my gist.
yeah, I think that's perfect note to end on too. That to stay curious,
Yeah,
and that's one of the reasons I do this podcast. And the audience is anyone that is curious.
yeah, absolutely. No, it's good, Rich. I'm glad you're doing it, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bill.